8-1 it is. The Anaheim Ducks finished dead last in the Pacific Division last season. Ended up, of course, with the second overall pick, taking one Leo Carlson, who is still with the team at the moment. Another highlight of their offseason, backing up the Brinks truck for one Alex Killorn on a deal worth $6.25 million until 2027 for the 34-year-old. Beyond that, not too many major changes. They have some younger guys who, working their way into the lineup, the more full-time options, still developing, the Mason McTavishes of the world. They should have Jamie Drysdale back for the start of the season after a season-ending injury that you could see impacting his career in a negative way. But for me, the biggest takeaway for the Ducks right now, they are continuing to screw around with Trevor Zegras.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. You paying Killorn over $6 million, and they're saying that their offer for Zegras is like between $3 and $4 million. Like, Are you serious?
This is a guy who has back-to-back 60-point seasons on this Ducks team. He is 22 years old, the face of this franchise at the moment. And this is a tremendous way to try and screw up any goodwill that you have with this player, especially once that scary time comes up of pending UFA status. If you even get there, who knows? They might have to trade the guy at this point. When the theme in the league is, Jake Sanderson, you're not a number one defenseman yet, but we here in Ottawa think you're going to be. Let's pay you. When that is the trend around the league, and you have Anaheim doing the exact opposite, it's just not a good look. And I can't understand the logic here. I just can't. Yeah. For that reason, I have the Ducks doing about the same. They can't technically do any worse than finishing in dead last in this division. But if they do better, I don't necessarily think it's based off of their own merits, but more so teams ahead of them from last season getting worse. So it's just not a pretty time for the Ducks right now. Danny, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I have them pretty much about the same as well. The fact that they're playing along with this whole Zegras thing is ridiculous with 2 weeks before the season. And the key words there, face of the franchise. Your franchise, it should be nowhere but up, but I feel like the Ducks, the longer they continue to prolong this, are going to keep going downward. And this is going to be a season that's going to be defined of when is John Gibson going to be traded. Like, I feel like this is going to be the year where they pull the trigger and they ship him off to a contending team that needs a goalie. He's done his time. He's done his due diligence. There's no more for John Gibson to give to this franchise, especially if the directions of what they're doing with their cornerstone franchise savior, I guess would be to put it, you're not getting anywhere with him, and you're offering him well below market value. And the Ducks have the cap space. It's not like they don't have the cap space. They don't really spend a whole lot to the ceiling every year, so it's not like they don't have the money. So I don't see anywhere, especially now with a new coaching regime, I don't see how they're any better. If Drysdale comes back from injury and has a great season, then maybe you can start getting the optimism. But I just don't see anywhere how the Ducks can even be 15, 20% better than what they were last year.
Yeah, they're in a pretty weird spot. Like you mentioned, like the lowballing of Zegras, and I just wish the NHL was cool and they, teams were willing to offer sheet other people, because I would do that in a heartbeat if I, was a GM. Offer sheet him for $7 million, force the Ducks into a situation to sign him, and if they don't, you got a chance, and you're not giving up anything too crazy in terms of picks. But obviously, you'd only do that as a team probably on the bubble. You don't want to risk that because it should be, what is it? Like in that range for this year, that's like first and a third, I believe, right around that $7 million mark
Something
for
like
compensation. So
Yeah.
I would say that's worth it, especially for a bubble type team, because Trevor Zegras is sick, and I don't know what Bob Murray's doing. Like the franchise itself, they were so successful when they were, had the Getzlofs and the Perrys, and they signed all those guys long term, and they enjoyed success because of that. They'd won a cup with those kind of guys way back in 2007 or 6. Anyway, but yeah, I just don't get it, and I think I agree. They might get a few more points than they did last season. McTavish, if he makes the team, which he should, could probably give him some boosts here and there. But yeah, like they might get a few more points, but I think they'll be higher in the standings simply because there's one team in particular who's going to be absolute ass.
We'll get to them in a second. I do want to note two things, and Endo, if you have anything to add after this, let me know. If not, hey, we can move on. Number one, I love the potentially Freudian slip of Bob Murray as the GM, who, of course, was there with the Ducks for a long time. Their current GM, Pat Verbeek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Who's been there for...
I always think Bob Murray when I think the Ducks.
Right. No, I don't blame you for that at all.
As we should.
In terms of cap space, Endo and I talked about this on the last show.
Yeah.
There are 4 teams who could theoretically right now afford Trevor Zegras without a follow-up move. The Anaheim Ducks have the most cap space in the league at $16 million. But they're nickel and diming Trevor Zegras. You have Chicago with just under $13 million, and I still say, man, you add Trevor Zegras with Connor Bedard as your 1-2 punch down the middle.
Exciting, at least.
At the very least. The Buffalo Sabres with $8.7 million. And that idea of down the middle, Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins, Trevor Zegras. Flip the order if you want to. And then the other team with $7.9 million in cap space, the Nashville Predators, who, again, you have Trevor Zegras and Ryan O'Reilly down the middle as your 1-2 punch. Certainly do worse and would certainly help keep Nashville a little bit more relevant than what they might be. We'll talk about them in a future edition of the show, of course, but they're in a pretty weird spot. And actually, a third thing I thought of, shout out to the Ducks for completely brutalizing John Gibson's trade value, because there's no way they're getting as good of a return on him now as they could have a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
So I was going to say really quickly, I mostly said everything last week about the Ducks that I want to say today. It's since they won the cup, they haven't really had an identity. It was kind of like they've won it. What do we do now? Everyone either left to go get their own cups on different teams, or they just kind of stayed put because they got paid a lot of fucking money. Ever since Timu left, it was like, okay, cool. Now we have nothing. And now we're just going to kind of put something together and have something work. You had your best prospect at the time, then it was Frederik Andersen, and you traded him away. And then you could have done the exact same thing with John Gibson and got the exact same, even better return, because arguably John Gibson, I would say, is a better goaltender than Frederik Andersen. Fight me for that. But now his value is completely tanked because he's got injured so many times. Like, you put so much strain on a goaltender, they're going to eventually just break. They're not going to
literally
be as strong. Yeah.
Carried that team for so long. Like, he carried that team into the playoffs and then got swept by the Sharks. And, like, that was, like, the last hurrah for Gibson. He was good in that series, too. Like, in that sweep. It's pretty rare that you get swept and the goalie's pretty freaking good still. But, yeah, it's unfortunate that that's the way it's gone. But, yeah.
Exactly.
Anaheim Ducks, not looking too good. Sin, did we get your answer? Better, worse, about the same?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they may have a few extra points. Like, I don't think they're going to be leaps and bounds better. I think there's some things in place. But, again, all the stuff that they're adding or getting back in Drysdale, they're all young talents, and they're such wild cards. Like, they might not have the direct impact despite looking like monsters in international or lower-level things. It takes a while to adjust to the professional level, like even AHL.